after this school year. Staff reduced the number of available spots at SOES and began planning to replace the 2 dormitories. Next step, please. This presented a challenge. The use of proceeds of disposition or the school renewal funding for renewal of rebuilding outdoor education facilities must be approved by the Ministry of Education. Since permission has not been granted and estimated construction timelines extended beyond September 2025, SOES will be closed for safety reasons for next school year. The reopening of SOES is contingent on identifying funding sources for the repair and replacement of buildings. Next slide, please. The estimated construction costs at this time is planning for the replacements of 2 dormitories is still in the preliminary stages. The estimated cost for the 2 dormitories range from $1 million to $3.6 million. Next slide, please. Moving forward. Thank you. We will continue our plan to conduct an in-depth review of outdoor education and an added focus on developing a more sustainable outdoor education program model for the future. This includes seeking ministry approval for the new buildings at SOES, constructing new buildings for use in September 2026, which includes inclusive and accessible design to meet the diverse needs of students. Develop a capital plan to address the aging infrastructure of the buildings at all of our outdoor education centers and the potential of an Indigenous land-based learning center, and seeking new revenue streams to find capital plans, including fundraising, exploring partnerships, and land trusts. Reviewing outdoor education programming, structure, and organization. Thank you very much.
And with that, we'll take questions from trustees. Trustee Shen.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to ask what the safety concerns specifically are, in the sense, I'll tell you frankly, to profess my questions, there is a perception that we are slowly giving up on this site. And that perception is out there. And I want to be clear, I'm not coming in with this perception, but I want to be clear that more people understand if that's not the case. For example, a temporary closure for a year and not having the funding to renovate may need to a bit more longer and slowly phase out the use. And then once it's not being used. And so, we have had recent example of a very big debate around Ontario Science Centre and the safety report. So I want to know what this report is and what is specifically being concerned about safety.
Thank you. And through the chair, thank you for the question, Trustee Shan. And I would like to, for anyone listening and all listening particularly, who work at SOES, it is a treasure. And we in no way are wishing to manufacture a closure, if I may be so bold as to use that phrase, because I think that may be what you are intimating in that question. So many of our students live in condominiums, townhouses, and our ability to provide them an opportunity for outdoor education at SOES is a really tremendous life experience for them that can be life-changing in many ways. And that is why that last slide that David went through, again, represents our commitment as leaders to try and secure future funding for not just SOES, but all of our buildings. I'll invite Executive Officer Pichetti to talk specifically about what the concerning elements of the 2 dormitories are. I will say that SOES is not alone in having facility renewal concerns. In fact, all of our outdoor education centers are aging. They all have been assessed with requiring urgent repairs and then repairs into the future. And that is why our attention has to be finding a funding source in short order. And we look forward to working alongside our different community partners, starting with TLC to in the conservation area for Toronto. So Maya, do you mind just specifically talking about the areas of concern? Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair and to Trustee Shan. So these are buildings that were built in the late 70s, and they are deteriorated in part just by virtue of the types of structures that they are. These are outdoor cabin-like structures. They're not as robust as you would find a typical school building. These are built out of wood. They're more vulnerable to the elements, and they have simply reached the end of their life. As well, there is some soil settlement that has caused some grading issues around these buildings, and that's contributed to some structural concerns with these buildings. So when we did the very detailed facility condition assessment, that's one of the things that was noted about these buildings, that where they're located on the site, which is at the bottom of a slope, probably was not the best place to locate them, but that's where they were located. And they have, over the years deteriorated from that point of view.
Thank you. So without hearing a lot of the specifics around which part of the building, what are the architectural issues, am I correct in assuming that out of all of our outdoor education sites, if you were to rank the urgency of repair to the extent that we need to close down, SOES would be the top?
Through the chair, that is correct. Trustee Shan, so I think you wanted more detailed. So Maya, I'm going to just share, in one of the dormitories, there were cables installed previously as a remedy to make sure that walls maintained their strength. Roof condition is of concern. Water penetration in walls also a concern. So there are, if that helps with some of the specifics. And again, you saw the value of the investment going forward. And yes, I can confirm SOES presents the most significant challenges for the structures.
So my next question through you, Mr. Chair, is that in the last, say, five years or so, did we invest into any repairs across any outdoor education site? If we did, how much money did we spend?
Thank you. And through the chair, we did pull that data, and in total for the last slightly more than 10 years, from 2013 to 2025, we've spent approximately $6 million on our outdoor education centers for sort of various renewal projects. And in terms of maintenance, we've spent about $3.5 million distributed among the various outdoor education centers.
And then my next question then is, if we spent that amount of money, was there a prioritization based on the prioritization I was asking earlier, that, this one is close to having to shut down, or was that amount too high to invest into one particular action, as opposed to the rest of the money that was mentioned here was kind of distributed over a lot of different kind of fixing?
Thank you for the question, Trustee Shannon. I'm making eye contact with Senior Officer Pichetti, but we would always be making decisions based on the condition of the building needing repair, and that would be the priority order that we would attend to.
So I also see that a statement that says permission has not been granted, an estimated construction time extended beyond September. So Ministry of Education has not granted the permission, it says. Was the permission asked, and in what format was it asked? Was it through a letter from the staff? Was it a phone conversation? How was the request made?
Thank you for the question through the chair. Maya has had many conversations with the ministry in regards to the use of POD. My understanding is that those questions have been oral, but I'll turn to Maya if there was further detail in writing about POD.
Thank you, and through the chair. So in a B memo circulated in 2020, that is a ministry memorandum, it does specifically call out that capital funding or capital investment in outdoor education centers does require ministry approval. As there are times when we have to deal with urgent priorities that you know are signaling a health and safety concern, we will proceed and get that work done because safety is of course our number one priority. But to undertake a major renovation or a rebuild of the buildings, because at a certain point, if a building is beyond repair and actually does need to be rebuilt, we would require ministry approval. I did send several emails and have had conversations with the ministry about that. And I am awaiting some clarification about whether we could rebuild these two buildings at Scarborough as opposed to undertaking repairs given their condition.
So through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I am aware and understand that we need the permission, but when we say permission has not been granted, it doesn't mean permission has been denied. It just permission has not, request for permission has not been responded back with. Is that right to assume?
Through the chair, I am seeking some clarification because what we're proposing to do for the Scarborough, those two buildings, is beyond a repair.
Through the chair, we have not sent a formal letter to request use, but we have requested it in our regular meetings with them and did say that we expected an answer, a written answer, yes or no, with regards to proceeds anyways, and that's just staff to staff.
Okay. So thank you. I do think, you know, a decision to the extent of closure might have needed a bit of a formal, because this is in the bigger picture of things, you know, $1 to $3.6 million for Scarborough Outdoor Education Center, with the possibility of us using proceeds of disposition or school renewal funding. I'm a bit concerned, A, did we push enough? Or B, if the province is ignoring this, it is also important for the community to know that, you know, this is something that could be done by giving permission for it to begin, because I'm assuming it says the extent to which the construction timeline would be is also not determined, because obviously we don't really have the money approved. But so, and the construction, as we know, starts to cost more the more we delay things as well. So I'm a bit concerned. So maybe we should figure out a way to either staff take that on to kind of formally request it, or the trustees also write to ask that this is one of our key sites of outdoor education, and we would like to either have the province help us with this rebuild or let us use the resources. I'm sure many of the Scarborough members of provincial parliament would be hopefully happy to support. My last question, maybe a couple more questions. One is around the range. It says 1 million to 3.6 million. That is quite a range. So what is causing that range?
Thank you, and through the chair. The range is representing the possibility of replacing one dormitory, building a replacement building that would replace both dormitories and have features that would make the building accessible, have a cafeteria within it, so that would demonstrate the range. Please know, Trustee Shan and members of FBEC, staff have been very, very diligent in raising the question of funding source with the ministry. I want to be very respectful of our ministry colleagues, and also acknowledge that, of course, they had many changes in personnel, and they went through an election as well. So our meetings have once again started. And this is a frequent topic of conversation. And I know that Maya is seeking clarity of other funding sources. We felt it imperative that we do announce this to the board, given the timing and the timing necessary to build, if the ministry were to grant us approval. To move on the plans that are in place. So I just want to reassure you that our hard press has been present, and it's now in your awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. My final question is related to staffing. What is the impact of the closure on staffing? How many staff would be impacted? What is our plan to support any transition or reassignment of those staff? And yeah.
Thank you. And through the chair, I'll begin, and then I'll invite centrally assigned principal David Hawker-Budlowski to add more specifics. Trustees, as part of the options to balance, you'll also see a paragraph in regards to outdoor education that speaks more broadly. If trustees are not considering a new mode of outdoor education that is only within the funding allocation of $2.1 million, and would want to have expenditure beyond that, SOES in itself, if it were the only closure due to safety reasons, our plan was to redirect that staff to our other 4 sites. These are highly qualified and skilled individuals that would be needed elsewhere with our other 4 sites. But you'll have seen the paragraph in regards to outdoor education to be considered more broadly coming in at budget. So depending upon direction from trustees, that redirection, Trustee Shan, is contingent.
Thank you. Sorry, I said that's the last question, but I do have some time, so I'll ask one more question. Is there opportunity for the community to support directly in terms of, because there is a lot of history and legacy, and there's multi-generational interest in saving the site for the future generations. So is there an option that's being considered?
Thank you, Trustee Shan. We have been exploring that through the course of this year. Right now, that is not aligned to the associations that we have that have fundraising opportunities. And that's why that last slide that talked about pursuing a land trust is an option that we want to pursue vigorously with TLC. And you can be looking forward to a report that would require the approval of the Board of Trustees for us to establish that, where fundraising would be an option. It is also going to require ministry approval. And that is where our leadership is going to be moving to immediately, so that we can resolve this and ideally keep all of these sites for our students.
Thank you. That is definitely it for me now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair and staff.
Thank you, Trustee Shan. Are there any other trustees that want to speak to this?
Yeah, if there's no one else that wants to speak to it, I have a motion I'd like to move. Thank you.
You're making an amendment, or?
No, it's in the folder. I don't know if it can be put on the screen. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
Sorry, we're going to take a mover and a seconder for the motion, and then we will look to amend. So thank you, and I apologize for the confusion. I need a mover and seconder for receipt of the report. Trustee Rajwani. Trustee Erhart. Can we open the vote, please?
Oh,
Oh.
my motion amends the report. I apologize. The motion amends the report, so it has to take place during the report. I should never have seconded because it's receiving the report with recommendations. My apologies.
So now you're going to
Yeah.
amend it. Now,
Oh, yes.
Now you will
I
amend-
hereby move. My apologies, everyone, for
and I need
my,
a seconder for that.
yeah.
Trustee Rajwani.
Thank you. Everyone has got a copy in their package, I think. So do you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I'm
Trustee
happy to speak to it. I don't believe trustees received a fiscal package. And so for those in the room in particular, for those online, you would have received it by email. We're moving that the report be received with specific direction. And that's that the chair write to the Minister of Education requesting the use of proceeds of disposition to restore the Scarborough Outdoor Education Center for safe usage. This is written broadly to provide the flexibility needed for the areas and ideas that were discussed today, because safe usage is not just for this moment, it's also for the long term and what makes the most sense for this very important center. This is what we need to do in order to use proceeds of disposition, and so this is routine. The second part is that the director present a report in 2025 on the progress of restoring the space to safe usage, and so our hope is that we can get something in short order where we will hear positively that we can use proceeds of disposition and get started. And then to seek out options, and I can't see it myself on the screen, to protect and preserve all outdoor education lands and centers and their assets for public education. And so the report did make reference that staff are considering options more broadly in outdoor education. I think this is an important part of how we're seeking out those options and ideas that all of these really be used for public education and whatever options are being considered, and that it extends to all the lands that are encompassed, all the dwellings, and all of the assets on the land. I hope that's helpful and happy to take questions. I don't know if Trustee Rajani would have
Rajwani, do
any.
you want to speak to this?
Yes, thank you. And through the chair, I just want to comment that I'm seconding this motion because really at the heart of this motion is ensuring that our students have access to these spaces across the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Rajwani. We will now take a speakers list, and with that, Trustee Laskin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'm not on the committee, but when this comes to board, I will wholeheartedly support it. Outdoor education in the Toronto District School Board predates amalgamation. Many of these sites were treasured assets of former boards. Generations of citizens in Toronto have been through outdoor education centers. I believe now more than ever, there is research that shows the value of outdoor education in terms of physical and mental health, social and emotional development, all leading to improved academic performance, which is really the goal of public education. These need to be treasured, valued, and supported. I understand the funding issues. This is not new. And I reiterate my main theme, which will probably be recurring over and over and over again tonight. When the province overtook education funding in 1998, they should have acknowledged they took over all education funding, which was our schools and what was in our schools, our sites and what is in our sites. And the fact that they feel they can parse what's valuable to public education in the city K-12 And yet what isn't valuable for public education in the city K-12 simply has never been acceptable and is something that many, many, many folks have been fighting against since, frankly, amalgamation. Province's responsibility to fund our schools, our buildings, our facilities, and what's inside of them so that our children succeed. And that the thought that somehow outdoor education is not core to K-12, well, I think I've made my statement. I wholeheartedly support this motion and I will at board. Thank you.
Thank you, trustee Laskin. Trustee Shan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the mover and seconder, trustee Erhard and trustee Rajwani, for moving this motion. I'll be definitely supporting it. I think we need to keep this on the radar for multiple reasons. And I think the community wishes to see this particular site survive. And this motion helps to write a letter to the minister and formally request that permission and have it in an official record, but also allows some of the work that needs to be done in Part B as well. I would just, if that is not necessary to be put in the motion, but I think the letter also could say, we welcome any additional funding that the minister would like to invest into outdoor education to that, because it also then comes to, you know, proceeds of disposition are limited and why are you using this over that? So we should also frame the letter, you know, if we are not going to be able to support outdoor education, this is something we want to do. And that's what it is. So if it's understood, then I would love to have that included in the letter. Don't have to amend the motion. So yeah, thank you very much and appreciate trustees for helping with this.
And seeing no one further, I'll get trustee Erhard. I'll give you an opportunity to close if you're so inclined.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'd be happy. We can even add a friendly amendment if we so choose right now to have that explicitly stated here. But it's okay like this. I think it's very consistent with the advocacy of this board. So just thank you to all for your commitment to outdoor education. I'm very hopeful that we will support this motion, and to all of the staff, past, present, and future, and all of the little ones whose imaginations are sparked when they get to go to these precious places and spaces. It's very important that we continue to on that legacy for Toronto's children. So thank you very much for your support tonight.
Thank you, trustee Erhard. And with that, we'll open the vote.
Sean in favor.
Trustee Shan's in favor? No.
Trustee Patel in favor.
Trustee Patel is in favor. Thank you, trustee Patel.
Wong in favor.
Trustee Wong is in favor. Thank you, trustee Wong. Trustee Lee, can you tell us how you vote, sir? Trustee Lee? We'll assume that trustee Lee needs to step away for a moment. We'll mark him absent and close the vote, please. And that carries 8-0. Thank you. Now, before we go to item 5.3, I'm going to take the liberty as chair of FBEC to make a statement. I want to be really clear that I'm not the chair of the board. Don't perceive myself to be. And the statement I'm about to issue is my thoughts and my perspectives, and are not necessarily in part or in whole shared by the members of the committee. When we get around to this conversation, given the events of the last week, I will be asking why, for the better part of 10 months and 3 education ministers, it took all this time to formally reject our plan for the 24-25 budget season. I'd like to understand that. I'm going to want to know what responses we've got in the interim from the ministry with regards to our plans. Like his predecessors before him, on the 23rd of April, Minister Calandra, in his press conference on multiple occasions, talked about the record investments of education. It's their response anytime they're asked about education, they talk about the record investments in education. And I think anybody who's gotten a salary bump in the last little while, if you got a 1% increase in your raise and inflation was at 4%, the buying power of your household income went down, and the inflation cost, and that is the reality of this board. The education funding has not kept up to pace with inflation, and this board continues to be challenged by that. In his conversation, in his press conference, Mr. Calandra also shared that over the years, the TDSB has, and in his words, a quote, whittled away, unquote, millions of our reserve funds. I will remind everyone that the majority of our reserve funds were spent dealing with the COVID pandemic, and that is exceptionally proud work that my colleagues and I and staff and community and everybody came together to do the best for staff, students, and families, and we're proud of that work, and I don't consider that money to be whittled away, and nor do I consider it appropriate that it not be returned to the board. We followed the ministry's direction. We used the money to support students and families, and the money wasn't returned. Mr. Calandra also took exception of the fact that we had gone on public record identifying that we were in a deficit position in excess of $70 million. And we had not identified a single path option for savings. This is the most transparent public entity in the province and in the country. For months, we have had an approved budget plan that said exactly when we were going to deal with this, and staff was to present options to balance in today's meeting. Decisions are to be made in June. Today, we were supposed to get pathways to balance. The only thing that we don't have at this point is the core education funding. So we don't even know if this number is even, what's before us today is even the true target, because we were told this time last year the status quo funding was going to be in place, and when the document was released, we were $11 million worse off. So the document and the assessments that are before us today are only valid if it's revenue neutral, what we receive, and we still have yet to receive it. And once we get it, I'm told it will take in the better part of a week to figure out exactly what it means for us. The Auditor General's team was here for 2 years in our board, and they issued a report in December of 2024. And there was just talked about the potential that the province and the board work together collaboratively to deal with the structural deficits that we share. And I'm very proud of the work of the finance team that does, and they do their best. And we're constantly looking after the best interests of the people, students we serve, and cognizant of the value of every dollar we spend. I'm going to ask you to go on a little journey with me to think back to June 30th of last year. Staff is going to have completed all the forms, submitted the 200-page document to the board. Can't we go on a Canada Day holiday, return from work, and then someone, I suspect a junior in staff, is going to suggest that it's great that that's done, but when do we turn the page and begin working on next year's plan? And in that single moment, that singular moment, when we turn the page, we automatically have a structural deficit of $71.3 million. We have an unfunded portion of statutory benefits that total 43.7, and a difference in staff salaries, which totals 27.6 million. We have no methods whatsoever to deal with that underfunding. We have no cards to play, no decisions to make. We have made this known. We have advocated for years, and no changes have been forthcoming. So from the moment we begin the next year's process, we are $71.3 million behind the 8 ball. It is my personal opinion that if the minister and his staff are serious about wanting to locate the source of the TZSB's persistent budget challenges, I respectfully suggest that he and his team look in the mirror. And with that, we are going to turn to item 5.3, which is the last report of the evening, which is proposed options to balance for the 25-26 budget. It is on page 9 of the agenda. This is a report for receipt. I will remind everyone that we have a hard stop at 7:45 for the public meeting that will begin at 8 o'clock. It is the intention to have staff go through the entire report so that we make sure that we get through it all before we have to break. And then when we get into it, whether that's before or we reconvene after the public session, we will go through the items one by one and do questions that way. But initially, we will take the report in its entirety. Director Latouche.
Thank you, Chair McLean, and for those comments. Before I pass the microphone to Associate Director Stacey Zucker, who will lead through the presentation, just have some preliminary comments to add. For context, recognizing, as you've laid out in the timeline, tonight what the time scheduled in advance in our budget development cycle for the board to bring forward options to balance. I want to note that the information in the report do not represent decisions of staff or recommendations. At this time, they are options to get us to a balanced budget. I acknowledge the requirement legislatively for the director to bring forward a balanced budget for trustee consideration and recognize the responsibility of trustees legislatively likewise to pass a balanced budget. I think, Chair McLean, in your comments, you've laid out some of the challenges that lead to a structural deficit for the board and really position some very challenging discussions and challenging options and ultimately challenging decisions for each trustee and for the board of trustees. I want to acknowledge the commitment of trustees in their support of the board. And I also want to acknowledge the very difficult decisions that trustees have to make and the context in which trustees are making those decisions in light of your obligations legislatively, in light of your obligations and responsibilities to your constituents, in light of your commitments that brought you into the role of trustee in this board in the first place. So all of that is duly acknowledged and by staff, recognizing the very difficult position that you're in each year, and certainly the challenging circumstances under which you're having these deliberations and ultimately making decisions. I also want to acknowledge the work of staff as you did, Chair McLean, not just this year, but over time in doing the work necessary to bring forward options to trustees. And specifically, I want to name Associate Director Stacey Zucker and Executive Officer Craig Snyder for their tremendous leadership over this period of time, working with the other associate directors, the executive council, the senior team of the board, centrally assigned principals, and other staff to inform the options that are being brought forward. And just sincere thanks to you, Stacey, Craig, and the entire team. Please know how challenging it is for staff to be bringing forward the options that are before you this evening. We absolutely always want to center students in all of our thinking, in all of our decision-making, including the options that are being presented to you this evening. And always would look to options that do not have an immediate and direct impact on students first. One of the challenges, as Stacey will point out, is of course that there have been significant cuts to the board's budget based on the realities that have been outlined over years, and leave us in the particularly challenging position this year of having, pardon me, no fat to trim, so to speak. And so the ability to sort of trim around the edges and avoid bringing the difficult options forward has been significantly reduced. And thus the options that are coming forward to trustees at this time, recognizing that those options do touch kids. Those options do affect the experience of students. We appreciate the work that music instructors, the IMIs do, and the value that they bring to the student experience. We appreciate the work of our outdoor education centers and staff and the experience that they provide for students. We appreciate the work of the staff that provide water experiences for our students and families, and in particular students and families in some communities. So we appreciate the value of that, and our hope would always be to expand programs, to expand services, and not to reduce. We recognize, given the challenge that is before us and the obligations that as director and with my staff, I must bring forward, and the options that therefore trustees must consider, that presents, you know, a unique a position for trustees to be in. And in the same way that you probably don't envy me, I do not envy you in the decisions that you need to make, and appreciate that we need to work together to get to a place where we're on solid financial footing in order to provide the best experiences for 240,000 students. So recognizing the obligations that we must meet, that has led us to the place where we have to bring difficult decisions forward, and want to acknowledge that with trustees. I think finally, Trustee McLean, you made comments about the Minister of Education's announcement on April 23rd. That has certainly introduced another factor. And I would dare say has upped the ante, so to speak, in the process that the board has to engage in moving towards a balanced budget in time with our timelines. And so considering all that, again, that has moved staff to present any and all available options. And just know that had other options having less impact and presenting less difficult circumstances been available, those are the options that staff would have brought forward. And please understand that we bring these options forward because they are required for us to meet our statutory obligations. And with that, I pass the baton to my colleague, Stacey Zucker, to present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Latouche. And through the chair, there is a presentation that we will walk through, and I think it has been sent to trustees and will be posted as well, but just so that we have them. So as the director indicated, this report is a planned report, and the chair of FPEC also indicated this was always the timeline of when these options would be presented. And it is certainly well in advance of the June 30th deadline, and is particularly tricky with, as the FPEC chair indicated, without having the core education funding yet, because that is a key part of preparing our budget. So the purpose of this report is really to provide options for trustees to consider as part of the budget process. And it is only today for options for information. It's an opportunity for trustees to ask questions and provide comments and concerns, and we are not requesting any decisions today. Trustees may make decisions, but that's not being requested as part of this report. I want to apologize. In the executive summary of this report, it refers to recommendations versus options, and that was wording matters, and it was not the intention that they would be recommendations. So I just want to acknowledge that. The body of the report refers to them as options. The executive summary had recommendations. I just want to clarify, these are options that are being put on the table. Some of the options may require reconsideration motions, and I just want to address that up front. And obviously would have to follow our bylaws accordingly. And again, I will mention it because it's so important. Usually by this time, certainly by this time, we do have the core education funding. And because we have not been able to finalize our revenue. And, I'm always hopeful for a big surprise in the revenue and not the surprise that we got last year as indicated by the chair. So again, this was part of our regular schedule. We have had to move the update on core education funding to the next meeting. But the options to balance were always being provided at this time. The next meeting is on May 15th, which will be an update on core education funding in a draft budget. Both of those were really contingent on the board receiving core education funding in a timely manner. And because again, we obviously can't provide the update if we don't have it. And it's difficult to provide the draft of the budget if we don't know the number that we're looking to make changes in order to balance. The approval of the budget is scheduled right now for the FPEC meeting on June 4th. It is due to the ministry on June 30th. And I'm not going to jinx this in any way, just to say that sometimes in the past, when the ministry has been late in releasing the grants, and I'm going to say this is probably the latest that I've seen, there have been extensions provided accordingly. So as the director indicated, we do have a requirement under the Education Act to submit a balanced budget. And in a regular year, balance to the ministry means the greater of, and greater I mean smaller, of 1%. So 33.3 million is approximately our 1%, or our accumulated surplus that's available for compliance. For us, that number is $16.7 million. And that is assuming that we are able to use our $28 million in proceeds of disposition for our 24-25 budget. In the same way that we found out last week that our deficit recovery plan had been rejected, we have not yet heard that our 24-25 budget has been approved. So I think there is an impact on whether we have a deficit in this current year or whether we use our proceeds to balance. I think that is contingent on the approval of the budget. We have had consistent deficits over the last number of years. And as a result, the board has submitted, I'm going to say multiple deficit recovery plans. The most latest one being submitted to the ministry on September 30th, 2024. And we submitted that budget assuming that we would have a $28 million deficit, that we would be starting in the same place as we were ending this year. But we saw through different impacts on our budget, whether it be inflation or other impacts that we don't have control over. We were starting at a $70 million deficit. So regardless, that deficit recovery plan that we submitted indicated that we would have an $11 million deficit for 25-26. So that was initially where we were starting with, is to try to get to an $11 million deficit for 25-26. And I just want to remind trustees of the deficit recovery plan that was presented in August of 2024. And it did include a resumption of IB fees, which has happened. It does include operational efficiencies and adherence to board policy, which has happened. It does include a reduction in employee future benefit liability phase-in, which has happened and will happen next year. So those are two for sure numbers. And then again, expected a use of proceeds of disposition for this year, knowing that next year we would see the last liability phase-in expense. So that was the position, and this is where we were operating from. And as we heard on April 23rd, the ministry has rejected that deficit recovery plan. I will say that, as you just saw, and since the plan involves operational efficiencies, we have implemented and will continue to implement the deficit recovery plan as it was submitted. However, since the plan has been rejected by the ministry, we are operating with the understanding that we are required to submit a balanced budget for 25-26 as opposed to an $11 million deficit. So really that's the biggest difference in staff finding out that the recovery plan had been rejected. With regards to our updated financial position, we know that we were at a $70.3 million projected deficit. The federal carbon tax was eliminated on April 1st, and this results in a decrease in our budget next year of $12.3 million related to the carbon tax. So that's how much we were expecting to pay next year related to carbon tax. With the elimination, we no longer have to pay it. So that updates our financial position to a projected deficit of $58 million for 25-26. We are operating with a structural deficit. And our definition of a structural deficit is that planned spending is greater than our expected revenue. And this isn't new. We've had this slide when we talk about our budget for this is my third year, and this has been here for 3 years. So in some cases, we are choosing to spend more in certain areas than are funded based on our priorities. And in some cases, we're not fully funded in certain areas. And I really wanted to talk about those areas because I think it's important to draw attention to them, and they are also referenced in the report. We know that for statutory benefits that they have been increasing year over year, especially since 2019. The increase compared to any increases in revenue, which have been the percentage that we receive for benefits, hasn't changed. The only difference has been as the salaries increase, the percentage that we get is based on the salary. So the slight increases in salaries have provided a slight increase in benefits. That being said, they have not kept up with the costs that we are incurring. And in 25-26, we estimate that the underfunding for statutory benefits is going to be $43.7 million. We also have talked about this before, where our revenue that we receive for teacher salaries is based on average teacher salary. And our grid is higher, and it always has been higher than the funding and then the central grid. And so as a result, we have, and if you were talking individually, it's about a $2,000 difference annually. And it doesn't sound like a lot, right? When you're talking about $2,000 per person, but when we accumulate the number of employees that we have, it's a $26 million difference between our salaries and the funding that we receive. And the number of teachers that we have is mostly controlled by the ministry with regards to the class sizes by regulation. So again, our number of teachers may change year to year depending on the number of students that we have, but we are always going to be consistently underfunded with regards to our actual costs for our teachers, based again on the fact that we have a grid that we have no control over. We have 63,000 more spaces in our schools than we have students. And so that means that we have schools that are underutilized. And it doesn't mean every single school is underutilized, and we actually have schools that are overutilized. And so in smaller boards, when you have this much, or when you have excess space, it's somewhat easy to transport students to the spaces. You know, you can do a boundary review and then you can shift students around. Because of the size of our board, and because of where the underutilized spaces are in comparison to where overutilized spaces are, this isn't something that's possible. It's not something that can be solved with the boundary review. So our biggest issue is that there's a moratorium on school closures, as we know. And so we cannot actually address any of the extra spaces that we have. And you've heard me tell this story a number of times, but I think it's important that we keep telling the story, is that we did have, the ministry did recognize that it costs more, or sorry, it costs the same to operate a school, whether it's full or whether it's 70% full. So if you have a school that holds 1,000 students, for the most part, it's going to cost the same whether you have 1,000 students in that school or 900 or 700 students in the school. But our funding is based on enrollment. So our funding actually decreases if we have less students, but it's costing us the same to maintain those schools. So the ministry actually recognized this, and they used to give what was called a top-up grant. And they would say, okay, we're going to top you up and we're going to give you whatever you're missing in enrollment. We're going to provide it to you in this top-up grant, because we know that it costs just the same to operate a school, whether it doesn't matter how many students are in it. What the ministry realized was that the top-up grant was actually discouraging schools or discouraging boards from closing schools. So they wanted schools to go through pupil accommodation reviews, and they wanted school boards to reduce their excess spaces. So they got rid of the top-up grant. And then they also put a moratorium in place for school closures. So they actually didn't allow boards the ability to deal with the challenge that they have. So our staff has done a calculation because there's so many factors that go into determining the operating cost of a school, whether it's just the costs of maintaining the school. There's also staffing savings that would happen. There's also all of the capital related costs. So all of our renewal costs that would be eliminated if we were able to close schools. So we've done a calculation of what our top-up grant would be in 25-26 based on our enrollment and based on the spaces that we have. And it would equal $41.3 million. So that's our best estimate as to the funding that we're losing based on not being able to close schools. We know, and we've talked about it a lot, that grants have not kept up or kept pace with inflation. There are lots of different numbers, and we sometimes refer to a $1,500 gap. Just even to be conservative, we have used the OPSPA submission that was submitted in November 2024. And they indicated that there's currently a gap of $776.41 per student. For TDSB, that gap equals about $184 million. And again, I know that's the low end compared to some of the numbers that we are looking at, but I think even that shows the significant challenges that we have with regards to inflation. So I think it was really important to walk through all of those areas because, again, as the director indicated, we know the challenges that we have in order to come to a balanced budget. And a lot of them are outside of our control. So the things that you're seeing today are the things that are within our control that still allow us to meet that obligation for a balanced budget. When we looked at where do we look, what do we consider, these things are certainly, and as the director indicated, at the forefront of every decision are students. And the way that we're supporting students is through our multi-year strategic plan. So when we look at our multi-year strategic plan, we really want to make sure that our resources are tied to our multi-year strategic plan. I think when I started, and you'll hear the quote sometimes, but it's show me your budget and I'll show you your values, right? It really is about how do we ensure that our dollars are going to the places that will have the most impact on our students. And again, that's through the multi-year strategic plan. We also have ministry regulations and collective agreements that impact staffing. We have a commitment, we did have a commitment through the Ministry of Education, if we were going to use our proceeds of disposition for this year, a commitment to our core mandate and a commitment to eliminate positions funded with one-time funding when that funding goes away. We also have the Auditor General recommendations. And so one of the recommendations, as we've talked about it a number of times, was that we work with the ministry to understand our structural deficit. The wording here is important, is whether we have a structural deficit or not. And there's different views on how a structural deficit is created and therefore whether or not we have one. But that being said, the other recommendation was to regularly assess programs and services that we deliver that are not fully funded, and redesign programs and services or fees charged so that they can be offered on a cost recovery basis. So that's really also about core mandate. In addition to how do we put forward these options to balance, public consultation is an important part of this process, and it informs staff in order to be able to determine what options to put forward. It also will help inform trustees in the decisions that they are making. So we have had 4 budget town halls with approximately 50 participants. We had a hybrid town hall with students, and there were approximately 20 participants. We've had delegations yesterday. We heard from 73 delegations orally and 18 written. And we have the staff initiated budget survey. And today, I think it's now over 14,500 responses. So all of that leads us to the what are we proposing? And before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the last 5 years. And we know going back even further, we've always been in a position where we've made reductions. We have made reductions over this period of time. Some of the reductions were budget decisions that were put in front of the Board of Trustees to make those decisions. Some of them were operational efficiencies that staff found and will continue to look for. And sometimes we use one-time sources to help balance a budget. So in order to deal with the structural deficit, we need to find reductions that have a long-term impact. And I say this because while we have balanced with one-time sources of funding, especially in the last 2 years, and proceeds being one of them, until we find reductions that have a long-term impact, we're going to be having this same conversation every year. We've heard, I feel like we talked about this before. I feel, we heard from our delegates yesterday that they'd been here in previous years having the same conversations. And they're right. They aren't necessarily new options that we're putting in front of trustees. And again, as the director indicated, we don't feel like we have any other choices. And with that, when we look at the reductions made over the last 5 years, we've looked at staffing, and we've cut $11 million from our central staffing over the last 5 years. That's, sorry, I'm trying to do math in my head, but I think it's 90 positions that have been cut from central staff over the last 5 years. We made reductions in other areas, but when we look at those other areas, when we look at central discretionary spending, where we, again, look for efficiencies every year, and we've cut $8 million over the last 5 years. And that's not to say that we weren't being fiscally responsible to begin with. That's saying that we are operating so lean currently. And I think it's important. I know trustees recognize this, and even was a motion in place to look at the reductions that have been made centrally because it has an impact on our ability to deliver services. But in just a quick view of the survey, when there's an open spot at the bottom to respond, a lot of the survey talks about, well, you should be looking centrally, you should be looking at 50-50, you should be looking in areas where that are not part of schools. And I think what this is showing you is that in the last 5 years, there have been very little impacts to students directly, and that was obviously purposeful. But the other thing that you notice is of the $120 million that's here, 60 of it, so about half of it, was using one-time funding. So every time we use one-time funding, it's one time. And so we're putting ourselves back in the same situation again the next year. And so that is, it feels good. It feels good to balance the budget and you know, to submit that budget to the ministry. But it does make us have to have these conversations again. Yeah, I'll keep going. So when we look at our proposed options to balance, you've heard how challenging it is. We really did a lot of work and presented the structural deficit update on March 27th to show areas where we are either unfunded, underfunded, or overspent. And in some cases, it's because our salaries are higher than the benchmark salaries in the grants. And I'll use school administration as a good example. In some cases, that's what it is. It's that we have our costs for our school administration are higher based on our collective agreements and again, something we don't have control over, than we're funded for. But it also is impacted by the number of school administration that we have, and that it is higher than we are funded for. Another one would be mental health supports. If I look at specifically just the funding for mental health supports, it's $5.3 million, and we're spending significantly more. And we know that we hear and we heard last night about the challenges that our students are facing with regards to mental health. And through the Auditor General also, that we need to look at increasing our support there. So those are all of the things that we considered is where can we impact, and how do we, again, keeping our students in mind, have the least impact on students. And not to say, as the director said, that it doesn't have an impact on students. We are at the point where the things that we're going to be looking at do impact some of the programming that we provide. So the first area is related to pools and our swim programming, and I am going to turn to Associate Director Salmon.
Thank you, Associate Director Zucker. So part of what we've outlined is that within the report, it provides some of the demographic backgrounds around the various pools. Certainly having been an individual that's been in this room for the last probably 2 or 3 times that we've had this conversation around pools, and also having 2 kids that have gone through the process in TDSB, that one of them is a lifeguard and one of them will complete his bronze medallion tomorrow night. I'm pretty pleased and pretty proud because I know that swimming is without a doubt a lifelong skill that we want all kids to be able to participate in. But no, having been part of these conversations, that a deficit that we face is significant. So I'll start off with some of the background around the pools. TDSB currently does have 66 pools across the city. Pools are located in both our elementary and our secondary schools, and the distribution will provide shortly, but there is also significant after-hour usage. The pools are always used, and I know that I've certainly used a myriad of them for myself and also for my kids and students in the various schools that I've had the opportunity to serve in. We also permit out in 37 of our schools, which provides invaluable opportunities. Surrounding GTA boards, though, do things differently when it comes to pools. And I think that's one of the challenges that we have to be able to acknowledge. Surrounding boards have very few pools, with most pools being owned and operated by the municipality. Pools are not equitably distributed across the district, and that's one of the challenges that we do face when it comes to programming. When we go to the next slide, and it provides a look at the actual distribution, and what you can see fairly clearly is that the vast majority of the pools are in fact located in the core of the city, with spatterings in different parts of the Northeast and also the Northwest. But there is a significant centralization with it when it comes to pools. And part of what we want to be able to do is make sure that one of our key tenets is be able to provide access for all learners across our system. Next slide, please. Part of our challenge is that there is no funding for pools operations and maintenance, and also for staffing when it comes to swimming programs. Those represent two significant challenges. In fact, part of the information that the ministry has certainly provided us last June in its memo was that pools are considered outside of the core mandate of school boards, and therefore there is an expectation that the operations of pools would be on a cost recovery basis. When we look at the notion of cost recovery, and the TDSB through the facilities and permits does in fact go about in order to try and achieve revenues from pools. We have approximately $6.1 million in lease revenues and $3.5 million in permit revenues. Those totals, though, when we look at the bottom of this particular slide and we look at the actual expenditures of pool, there's a significant difference. The cost of operating pools includes things like water treatment, utilities, additional caretaking for cleaning after hours, and general maintenance. The total operating costs are estimated at $17.2 million. That being said, and you see the little footnote that was at the bottom of that, no need to go back, the fact that this does not include the cost of aquatics instructors. And that's a key point, because when we do get to aquatics instructors and we take note of the fact that aquatics instructors, there's approximately 86 FTE across our system, and the cost is around $5.7 million. Currently, elementary schools require 2 aquatics instructors for programming, and secondary only requires 1. To comply with the current changes that have been made, we will need to go to a system where, in fact, we would require a total of 2 aquatics instructors on deck for secondary also. That would mean that the 39 secondary schools would cost an addition of $2.8 million for next year. TDSB is one of the only school boards that employs aquatics instructors. On the capital side, and I think part of sometimes we don't actually look to the fact that when we look at the actual notion of pools, over the last 10 years, TDSB has spent almost $27 million on pool renewal projects. These projects are extremely important because one of the things that we know is that when a pool goes down, it at times affects programming, and that programming affects both the actual permits, but also programming in individual schools. There's also the fact that we had a third-party audit that showed that our renewal needs would equate to somewhere around $126 million over the course of the next 10 years. And that's a significant amount of money. And part of what we have to also think about, that particular cost is a cost that would not allow us to do other things related to classroom learning. And I think that's part of the challenge that we have to look at that, pools and classroom learning. TDSB receives approximately $350 million per year to address renewal projects for the entire board. 126 of that over is anticipated would be for pools. That would be a challenge for us. Next slide, please. Thank you. When we look at the programming, and there's no doubt there's rich programming in TDSB when it comes to the use of our pools. As I've already articulated, I know from firsthand experience the joy that many kids do get from the programming that we provide, whether or not it's elementary schools who are participating as part of the physical education program and also for swim teams, or for those that don't have pools where they access the Swim to Survive program, which I will speak about shortly because it is a very important program that we have been utilizing in this board. Extracurricular activities for those schools in the elementary level that don't have pools, we'd be accessing city pools in order to support some of the extracurricular type programming. Secondary is also very similar with those schools that actually have pools would integrate it into their phys ed program and into other programs, and sometimes just providing access to pools during off periods such that students have access. We also have, for those schools that don't have pools, once again at the secondary level, they'd be accessing it through city pools and also for programming as far as swim teams go. Next slide, please. Now, I made reference earlier to the Swim to Survive program, and part of what the Swim to Survive program does is that it is a program that is funded by the ministry for students, and through the school grant program, it includes transportation to pools, and the program is currently run by the City of Toronto. It represents a significant opportunity for us, and when we look at the actual numbers, this past year, we had almost over 5,000 students that participated in this program, which represents a significant increase over the past 2 years when it comes to the Swim to Survive program. Part of what we want to be able to do when it comes to pools with respect to next steps is, number one, we want to expand the Swim to Survive program so that we're extending this program that is fully funded to all grade 4 students, providing equitable access to essential water safety skills, regardless of whether or not their school has a pool. Keeping in mind, we know that there is a significant difference between learning to swim programs and a Swim to Survive program. And we certainly understand that, but part of what we want to do is make a commitment to ensure equitable access across the system for all students in grade 4 that would be able to get access to that. Secondly, we want to be able to negotiate with the City of Toronto to ensure that pools are being operated on a cost recovery basis while exploring opportunities to expand the Swim to Survive program. And we have this type of arrangement currently with the City of Toronto, and we will be in negotiations around this as we move forward. Thirdly, we want to be able to explore third-party partnerships to seek additional cost recovery opportunities with third parties. We currently have those types of arrangements with 2 pools within our system, and we want to look for other opportunities in order to do so. And then as a last resort, where would it be necessary, we may have to close pools that are not leased. Part of this overall would lead to a significant savings over time, which is almost $12 to $13 million. Thank you. I'll back to Associate Director Zuber.
Thank you. And the next topic will be renewed music programming, and I will turn to Executive Superintendent Pangiotopoulos.
Thank you, and through the chair. This presentation will provide an overview of TDSB's itinerant music instructor program, recommendations and next steps. I want to start by clearly stating that we are committed in the Central Arts Department to continuing to offer professional learning opportunities that honor Indigenous perspectives and center students' lived experiences through culturally responsible and relevant approaches. Our commitment is unwavering. We recognize that we need to continue to work towards equity of access, engaging music programs, and fiscal responsibility. We do have currently several challenges with our program, with the IMI program, and they include but are not limited that the program is not available in all of our schools. Next nugget, please. Thank you. The TDSB will continue to evaluate access to musical instruments across the district maximizing opportunities for students to benefit from learning experiences in music. As you know, the IMI program is unique to TDSB and is not offered across other school boards. Its original intent was to provide students with enrichment and opportunities in music and music training for teachers. The planning was not focused on long-term sustainability of the program. Educators in our schools have benefited from sustained partnerships, previous slide, please, with IMIs through time, enabling increased classroom teacher knowledge. It has helped prepare educators for instructional leadership within a renewed music program model that we are looking at. Going forward, our commitment continues to be as it has been, that music will be offered in all of our elementary schools by elementary teachers. Resources and structures for supports will be available to support equitable access, and resources will continue to be culturally responsive, and we will continue to demonstrate our commitment to truth reconciliation. Now, next slide, please. As you can see, the IMI placements indicate that programs located at 38 of the highest LOI schools and 38 of the lowest LOI schools are currently in place. The placement of IMIs have not sufficiently prioritized schools with the highest populations of students who have been historically and contemporarily underserved. IMI placements are often aligned with the presence of musical instruments in our elementary schools, and this has reinforced inequitable access across the system. 192 of our elementary schools do not have access to the IMI programs. Next slide, please. Thank you. This table illustrates a breakdown of the almost $5 million annual cost of IMI to the TDSB. It's important to note that 99.25% of the almost $5 million cost goes towards salaries, wages, and benefits, including IMI's travel time between schools. On average, IMIs spend approximately 2 hours a week traveling, and they are compensated for this time. As mentioned earlier tonight, IMIs are not required to have an OTC, an Ontario Teaching Certificate, and the absolute vast majority do not. Therefore, classroom teachers must remain in the classroom while IMI instruction is occurring. And a significant amount of human and financial resources are used to provide training for them in terms of sound instructional practices, professional learning related to key TDSB commitments, truth and reconciliation, calls to action, equity, culturally responsive pedagogy, human rights, combating racism, bias, and hate. And this is at an approximate cost of $200,000. Next slide, please. We are looking at outlining a new vision of delivery of music programming in TDSB, and this model will take place beginning September 2025. We are looking also at taking some of the savings realized to increase central professional learning, focusing on enhancing educators' capacity to teach music, as it is happening in the schools and classrooms that do not have IMIs. We will be prioritizing student access to musical instruments and working towards a more equitable distribution of these instruments across the TDSB, looking always at equity of access and outcomes for students. We will continue to update our musical instruments inventory, and we will take this into account along with LOI so that decision-making aligns with TDSB's equity commitments. Next slide, please. Actually, can we go back? I just want to highlight. There will be a budget savings of approximately $4 million with a commitment of the remainder amount to go into this renewal project that I've mentioned. Thank you. Just wanted to highlight that. The IMI, thank you. And there is another nugget and one more, please. Thank you. Staff believe that a revised model will serve students more equitably and increase staff capacity. We will be looking at equitable distribution of musical instruments and continued programming in music across the TDSB. We will be focused on professional learning to enhance teacher capacity, and we know that this will address issues of equity of access and fiscal responsibility. Thank you. Thank you. The new model will include collaborative efforts by the Partnership Office along with the Central TDSB Department to increase the number of organizations that are available to support with music programming. We currently have 66 organizations with music-based educational partnerships with the TDSB, and they also provide programming. Efforts by the TDSB Central Arts Department will prioritize expanding its professional learning offerings for teachers of music. We will be leveraging the expertise of the 636 elementary teachers that are currently in place that have additional qualifications in music. We will be looking at fully or partially subsidizing AQ offerings in music, as well as opportunities for schools with already strong music programs within families of schools to share their best practices. We will be closely monitoring the outcomes along with the TDSB vice principals and principals, Central Arts Department, Research and Development, and use key performance indicators that will include students attending schools in high priority neighborhoods that will be offering culturally and continue to offer culturally responsive, relevant, and engaging music programs. Looking at student engagement in music and student achievement in music on the provincial report cards. Thank you, and I'll turn it back.
Thank you. And we will keep going through the options. So the next one is one-to-one devices. So currently we provide students with the opportunity to receive a device in grades 5 and grades 9 to support the learning over those 8 years. The annual cost to provide these devices, and we provide Chromebooks, is approximately $9 million. So this option that we've presented is a move from starting the device distribution in grade 7 versus grade 5. So they would get one device that would last for 6 years versus 2 devices that last 4 years each. It would result in an annual budget savings of $4.5 million. The other thing that I want to add here is the one-to-one device program is not the only way that schools have devices. And in fact, when we look, and because we do track the number of devices that we have in the system, currently there are 230,914 Chromebooks in TDSB in our schools. Only 115,819 of those are through the one-to-one devices. So again, approximately half of the Chromebooks that we have in place are through one-to-one. And our schools also have 115,000 other Chromebooks, in addition to other devices or other technology in their schools. So this would be the option. It does not mean that our students in grade 5 or 6 would not have the ability to access devices. And we do know that there are instances like EQAO, for example, that is done on a device where grade 3 students and grade 6 students will have to have access at certain points. So we will look at a way to equitably distribute the devices that we have, and that will come back to us as we phase out this process. So again, just high level, that's the recommendation related to one-to-one devices. When we look at outdoor education, we do operate 9 outdoor education facilities, 4 day centers and 5 overnight centers that are listed above. We do receive funding through core education of $2.1 million. We also receive other revenue, including donations, program fees, and rental income of $2.3 million. These costs, but the cost associated with providing outdoor education is about $9.1 million. So we are overspending. Again, this is coming from the list that went to board on March 27th, $4.7 million. So this does not take into account those renewal costs that we were talking about earlier that relate to the outdoor education facility, and they would require funding as well through capital funding. So staff are committed to offering outdoor education on a cost recovery basis. So we will be doing a further review to determine how to achieve a cost recovery basis, and that would result in the savings budget impact of $4.7 million. And obviously we are aware of the motion attached to providing outdoor education opportunities to students, and we will ensure that it's considered during the review. And if there are any changes required, as we indicated earlier, we would have to bring back for reconsideration if necessary. With regards to continuing education, I will turn it over to Superintendent Elson.
Thank you and good evening, trustees. Through the chair, I'll be walking you through various programs that we offer through continuing education and provide you with an update on savings and anticipated revenue. Part of this is a good news story in that we've found some operational efficiencies and we've streamlined processes, and our deficit in continuing education is $2 million less this year than the previous year. As I've shared with trustees, our adult ESL program will be changing its reporting line and will be part of the Community Services Department effective September 1st. And with the change in structure, we are able to make reductions to our central administrative line. Through attrition, we will be reducing 2 positions, which will amount to savings of $209,400. As was reported in January at Program and School Services Committee, as was reported in January at Program and School Services Committee, we will be increasing user fees to increase to $15 an hour, inclusive of the HST. And as you know, and as was shared earlier this evening, part of that is connected to our board policy on running these programs at cost neutrality and further reminded to us by the Auditor General's report. Next slide. The International Languages Elementary African Heritage Program, again, we do have positions that we are able to eliminate through attrition. And we have 3 area principal positions, which are sessional. There are additional savings through program reorganization and delivery that we are anticipating. And therefore, total savings in ILE-AH will amount to just over $300,000. Another good news story is our increased use of learning outside the school day. This program, as you may be aware, is for students in grades 7 to 10 to support literacy and mathematics outside the school day. And we've really tried to push on that program this year, and there has been an increase in participation, which has led to additional revenue. And so our additional revenue anticipated is $430,000. As well, we are seeing uptake in our night school, summer school credit, and e-summer programs. And through increased enrollment and some cost efficiencies by working more closely with the various teams in continuing education credit and our e-summer team, we are anticipating revenue of $850,000. So the total projected impact here is 2.3 million would be great, million. Our adults high schools, as you may remember, there was in the current year, a reduction of 6.5 positions, which led to a savings of $500,000 for this year's budget. And we've also found other operational efficiencies in our adult high schools for a savings of 200. We're not proposing any further reductions to adult high schools for the coming year, but staff will undertake a process in the 25-26 year to explore the potential consolidation of sites. There are currently 5 adult high schools, and one option is to review enrollment and participation to see whether there are additional savings that can help with the bottom line in continuing education and for the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Felsen. The next option is the alignment of class sizes to collective agreements and regulations. So as trustees are aware, the Ministry of Education has class size regulations that dictate average class size and therefore funding. 26.1 in kindergarten, 20-1 in 1 to 3, 24.5 to 1, grades 4 to 8, in person 23-1 in secondary schools, and online 30-1. And so those are important because we do have to submit reports to the ministry to ensure that we are in line with average class size. And when we are in line with average class size, then our funding matches up with the number of positions that we have. When we are below, then we have additional costs associated with being able to have a lower than average class size. And this is something that when we did meet with the Ministry of Education, they did bring this up as one of the areas that they thought that there was some room for for us. Obviously, students don't come in nice little packages of 20 students, right? That we don't control the number of students in each of our schools. It's based on the catchment areas. So as we have smaller schools and we are not able to close schools, obviously this does have an impact. But what we will do is look for potential ways to align as best as possible during our reorganization. And just the example that I give, in 23-24, our average class size for 4 to 8 is 24.5 versus 24.1 versus 24.5, which is required in regulation. It sounds like, you know, that's rounding and it's pretty close and we're compliant, so we're good, and we're below, so we're good. It does require 68 additional teachers if you just did the direct math. So again, it will be challenging to get to 24.5, and this is just one area. It will be challenging to be at exactly our average class size in every area, but we will look to do so as best as possible. And we do, through that, project a budget impact of about $7.5 million. The reduction of positions originally funded by the elimination of one-time funding. Again, this is also an expectation of the ministry that was directed to us when we were looking to use proceeds of disposition, and really an expectation that when we receive they call them responsive education program grants right now, a lot of times there are staff attached to those grants. We use the grants to add staffing, and when the grants go away, the expectation is that we either make the staffing adjustments accordingly, or we find budget by making other reductions in order to keep those positions. So specifically, we're looking here at the COVID Learning Recovery Fund. In 2021 and 2022, we did receive $31.5 million to support COVID learning recovery. The $31.5 million funded 522 positions. In 23-24, when the funding was eliminated, we did make the adjustment to reduce 429 of the positions. And I will say that in some cases, it was board staff who kept them for SBSMs, and then trustees via motions for others. But between those two instances, we did maintain 93 of those positions. And the 93 positions are included here: 28 vice principals, 40 school-based safety monitors, 12 social workers, 2 child and youth counselors, and then 2 other caring and safe school staff. So if we were to reduce these positions, there would be a budget impact of $10.3 million. I will say that vice principals and school-based safety monitors on this list were passed by the board at the March 6th, I believe it was the 6th special board meeting. And as a result, if we were to make these changes, it would require reconsideration by the board. The new procedures and improved support for employees. And this is really thanks to the work led by Associate Director Pond, but also through our People and Culture Department, through Executive Officer Ellis. So in the last year, we've made a number of changes to support staff and managers, and that really was the intention. We've been hearing about the challenges, and we wanted to make sure that we made the changes in order to support staff and managers. Those changes have also led to positive budget impacts. And we did some of the examples, and this certainly isn't an exhaustive list, but it does explain a number of the changes that were made. We did reorganize People and Culture to better support staff wellness and improve the investigation function. We have created an attendance support program, and we have developed and implemented the employee interim measures pending investigation procedure. So in 2024-25, the current year that we are in, we did have in our budget a savings of $7 million projected for this year, and then it was increased to 10.5. through our budget process. And then at revised estimates, it was reduced back down to 6.8 million based on our actuals and what was actually happening. So our projected financial position of 58 million already does include $5 million in additional savings, again, for the replacement costs related to sick leave. So we do, as we implement the attendance support program, as the people and culture functions do their work, we're projecting savings. As we work to sustain this progress and to continue the progress, we do require an additional resources, and that was also indicated by the Auditor General, but it will lead to additional budget savings. So we do expect the net budget impact to be an additional $5 million. And where we're looking are places like, reducing the time that people are off on investigations, which we have been addressing. And when we do that, obviously it's better for, first and foremost, it's better for students and it's better for staff, but there's also a budget impact. So we are quantifying that budget impact. And again, our estimate right now for next year, based on all of the improvements that are being made, is about a $5 million savings. A commitment to nurturing local schools. So we do have students that do access alternative schools and specialized program, and we know how important this is and how necessary it is for some of our students to thrive. At the same time, we know that there are opportunities to support some students in our local schools and provide better access to programming and supports. So as in the past number of years, we have been providing supplementary staff in some of our smaller schools, and I would say in particular in alternative schools, to ensure access to the minimum programming required. But by ensuring that the local schools provide that supportive environment and meet the needs of programming for some of our students, we do believe that it is possible to reduce the supplement, and we are looking for a projected budget impact for next year of $600,000 again. But it really is about making sure that all of our local schools are schools that provide the support that is needed for our students. Central budgets, and here we go again. And we do look at this every year. We are not proposing any reductions in staffing, and we are not saying that we're going to be able to make these savings and continue everything as usual. But we do believe, like everywhere, that we can take a look at things like our licenses, like paper usage, like technology purchases and subscriptions that we have, and make those reductions. So again, it's not saying that there was overspending happening. It's saying that there is going to be less of certain things in some of our central areas in order to support balancing the budget, and again, trying to have as minimum impact on students as possible. So the target for this review is about $7.5 million. So in total, with everything that we just talked about, we're looking at 59.2 million in options. We will continue. Well, first we need to receive our grants, and if we had a $58 million increase in grants, then we wouldn't have to have any of these conversations. So that's what we are waiting for. We do have collective agreement timelines that may require staff to declare position surplus prior to the decision making. And we have to do that in order to maintain the ability to actually make the decisions. So when staff are potentially declared surplus, it doesn't mean that the decision has been made. It means that we can still make the decision. If we were not to do this, then we would take away that decision-making ability. As I've said before, we can always add after collective agreement timelines. We cannot take away. So there may be instances where we are going to have to provide surplus notifications to employees as in order to maintain the decision-making possibility for some of these options. And then we will provide further detail, like outdoor education, for example, on some of the options. And we will also continue to look for other options. But again, if you go back to that chart, which shows where we are overspending, if you like, or underfunded, if you like, there aren't a lot of options. And I think the director also indicated to that this is, we are looking at ways to get there, but knowing that there is an impact. In the long term, we are undertaking a number of reviews that may have budget impacts in the future. It includes our operational review of procedure 597, which is French immersion and extended French. There's a model schools review that is happening. There's a secondary alternative school review that's happening. Our admin site review or modern workplaces is also ongoing. And so we are expecting through these reviews that there will be certainly improvements made to the support and the programs that we provide, but there also may be and should be positive budget impacts in the future. So with that, I will turn it back to the chair.
Thank you, Associate Director Zucker. I want to thank all the members of staff who did a tremendous amount of work and contributed to that and a detailed report. We are going to break and go into recess now with the expectation that trustees and staff will be in their seats at 7:55 so we can do a roll call so that we can promptly start the public meeting at 8 because we hope to have the public meeting and then resume FBAC at the conclusion of the public meeting. And then we can get into the questions and we will go through them one by one and deal with them separately and get as far as we can, depending on it, the nature of the questions and duration of the questions. So we're going to go into recess and I ask everyone to be in their places on time so that we can begin promptly at 8. And with that, we're